Nigeria's recent flood disaster has caused further disruption in the agricultural sector, showing slower growth quarter on quarter. On the sidelines of the annual Nigerian Economic Summit in the capital Abuja, CNBC Africa's Wole Famurewa caught up with the Nigerian Minister of Agriculture and asked him what can be expected from this sector of the economy.
A number of things we need to understand, even about the numbers that you were saying, with respect to the growth of the economy. Because if you look at the monetary aggregates themselves, we're running a system wherein there's a contractionary monetary policy that drives up interest rates. And therefore, the interest rate that anybody in my sector will need to get is 25%. If you're borrowing money at 25% and you're growing, you must be selling drugs. You're not doing agriculture. Right. So the interest rate policy just doesn't make sense because it's killing agriculture. No farmer can get money today. This year, we ran a program in which government put down a facility for banks to lend to agro dealers. These are the small input shops that are selling seeds and fertilizers.
How far has that gone?
No, because the Ministry of Finance put that facility together with us. My ministry, we put up 2.4 billion naira into an escrow account at the central bank. The total facility, 30 billion. We cover the risk of the bank, 70% of their risk with sovereign guarantee. Right. They lent 1.8 billion out of 30 billion, which significantly disrupted the value chain this year. So the point I'm making is that the interest rate doesn't make sense. The volume of lending, quantum of lending into this sector is not there. We are not Moses. We can't get water out of the rock. The banks have to start lending. The banks failed us this year. Right. And so we can no longer have a situation in which, banks just simply make money out of government deposit, out of treasury bills, and they're not lending to the real sector. And you have a contractionary monetary policy that drives up interest rate for everybody. And so I think that we are on track with fixing the value chain. We fix all the value chains I just told you, whether it's rice, whether it's cassava, whether it's cocoa, whether it's oil palm. We fix them. But so where's the financing?
No excuse.
No, the banks absolutely have no excuse. I think that's one issue. But what I think it's also very important to bear in mind as we go forward is the need to restructure the Bank of Agriculture to get affordable finance back into the sector. Look at $7.8 billion worth of private sector investment. They need working capital. And unless we have a financing system that makes that possible, it's not going to work. But on the flood issue, the flood is a wake-up call for us. It's part of a major climate change issue. Now, of course, when the flood happened, you saw Mr. President was very, very responsive. He was on the money. He was on the job. He visited many of the states that were affected. He immediately disbursed 17.6 billion naira to deal with issues of malnutrition, health and sanitation, and housing for those that are in the camps. And that is great leadership at work. But beyond that, as the Minister of Agriculture, I knew there were farmers that lost everything that they had. So my heart bleeds a lot when I see that. However, we need to put things also in context, because there were a lot of data being thrown out in the media. If you believed everything you read in the media, you will think we are all amphibians and we are all living underwater in Nigeria today. It's not true. You hear people tell you 5 million hectares washed away there, and another 3 million hectares washed away. Here are the facts. What we did was, media news is not facts. In agriculture, what we did was I brought in the International Water Management Institute, which is the world's #1 center for managing flood. And we used, over a 2-week period, remote sensing and satellite images and vegetation data to actually find out how much area is inundated. And for how long will that inundation last? By how much will the water recede? How quickly? And so how quickly can we go in and replant? And so it was very sophisticated analysis that we did. And what did we find? We found that the total amount of area that was actually inundated, the 12 worst affected states, which accounts for over 98% of everything, was 1.4 million hectares. Now, using vegetation data, we looked at how much of that is actually area on which we experience crop loss. and it was 460,000 hectares. Now, the perspective is as follows. The total amount of area cultivated in Nigeria is 40 million hectares. So you take 460,000 and you divide it by 40 million, you get 1.17%. And so
not very significant.
It is totally insignificant. So Nigeria will not experience a food crisis. Nigeria will not have a famine. It's a shock in the system. And so I just want you to be very clear that all those running around, a lot of people want to bring in a lot of food, to get waivers, but not under this government. We do our job very thoroughly. But let me also say that the president went the extra mile. Immediately directed that I need to put in place a flood recovery plan, and I did. We put in place as a government what we call a flood recovery food production plan. Mr. President released 9.7 billion naira for us to do that, and the plan has 4 components. First and foremost is we have released 40,000 metric tons of food from our domestic grain reserve for those that are directly affected, by the floods. We've already done that now out of 10 silos across the country, and we continue to do that. We'll finish it, in another two weeks maximum. Now, second, the farmers that lost inputs, that lost their seeds and fertilizers and investment, they lost everything. We are providing those things back for them because the water has receded free of charge by the federal government. The states don't even have to pay anything. The third is related to the fact that not every area that is flooded as a state is not all the state that's underwater. So those areas that didn't experience flood in the same state that had flood, we're giving them a lot more seed, a lot more fertilizers for what we call a double up production, so they can actually compensate for the losses in their own state. Other parts of the country that did not even experience any flood at all, we are also doubling up on seed and fertilizers. So in time of seed, we have already procured 14,300 metric tons of rice seed. That will plan for us from the flood recovery program, 330,000 hectares of land, on which we are expecting a total production of 880,000 metric tons. In the dry season, we are also going to intensify rice production. We have a plan for the Northwest, all the states in the Northwest. We are doing 260,000 hectares on the rice land in that dry season. So we expect about 440,000 metric tons from that. If you add that to the 880,000, you are at 1.3, 1.4 million metric tons. That more than compensates for any losses that we had. So I just want to assure you that we're doing our job. And also, one point not to forget, if this government had not been working hard since the last 1 year through the value chains in agriculture, in rice, in cassava, in sorghum, in maize, in soybeans, to add 8.1 million metric tons of food to domestic food supply, we will have felt that shock massively when the flood happened, because we provided 8.1 million metric tons of food buffer in the system. And that's why it's important as a government to continue to stay on the job, and that's what we did.